Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I'm your host, Kev Baker. I've got you in my safe hands for the next 2 hours of radio, and I'm coming to you from the smart land within the heartland of Scotland. Yes, Smart City Glasgow here via Truth Frequency Radio, the #1 network, and of course it's your #1 network, supported absolutely solely by you listeners out there. tfrlive.com, where protection, or we offer you protection from deception, and silence is consent. One of these days I'll get the introduction absolutely correct all the way through with no glitches whatsoever. But it wouldn't be the Kev Baker show if there wasn't a few glitches in the Matrix. Big shout out to last night's guest, Tom. Absolutely amazing stuff. A lot of good feedback on that show today. A lot of negative feedback as well. I provide, you decide. And that rule stands fast for today as well. Because with me here, I have one of my very pet favourite guests. And he is so. A, he's a nice guy. I've met him in real life. And B, he just happens to cover all the kind of topics that makes the Kev Baker show a firm favourite with a lot of you people out there. And I look forward to it once a month. It's been a little while since he was last on. He went through a dreaded update of the whole, how would you call it, Windows thing. We'll catch up with that in just a moment. But what I'm going to do is, I'm going to quickly hang up on the call here. I'm going to ask the guest to hang up as well. And I'll call you back in a second, Mr. Guest, okay? There's a little hiss on the line, so I'm going to hang up. There we go, and we'll start again. Now watch this. All that hissing noise will be gone. There we go. See? Just like that, Kev Baker rectifies the situation. Loud and clear, a little bit of hiss now, but we're good to go. So yes, tonight's guest, Ben Emlyn-Jones. He is here with us, and he happens to be the man behind something called Panwo. HPANWO. And that's a website dedicated to the latest news, views, and reviews from the world of government cover-ups, ghosts, UFOs, disclosure, ancient mysteries, strange stories about birds falling out the sky. You name it, Ben Emlyn-Jones, he is the guy that has got his finger on the pulse. I really don't know sometimes how he manages to keep up with so many different stories that are going on in this, what I call the apocalypse. Not the scary Ooga Booga apocalypse, the revealing. The revealing of everything. Everything being uncovered, and I can't think of somebody better than my good friend Ben Emlyn-Jones to bring onto the show to help us go over some of these topics. And tonight, it's going to be something myself and Ben, I think we share a passion for. Because Ben had already sent me a kind of suggestion list, an idea of the stories that he's been looking into and that we've covered tonight. And then today I came across something really, really exciting. It's something that myself and Ben have talked about on the show before. And oh my word, I'm quite beside myself on this one. But before I tell you what's going on, let's bring the big man in here. There he is. Ben, how you doing, sir?
Hello, Kev. I'm very well, thanks. Great to be back on the show again. Hope you're well too.
It's great to have you back, man. There was a little break in our communications there. And of course, you had to go through that forced update, that Windows update. How did it go, man?
Well, I am now on Windows 10, and I think it's going okay so far. I've had a few little difficulties, as always, but I've done a couple of shows like this, and they've worked all right. And so I'm hoping that everything will go all right tonight with you. It's the first time I've been on the show with your show with Windows 10, though. So, well, fingers crossed and all that sort of thing.
Everything is going swimmingly, my good friend. It's looking real good already. So I kind of messaged you today. You wouldn't have known it because it was a text message, but I was really excited, quite frantic. And yeah, fast radio bursts are something we've spoken about before on the show. And of course, these are these mysterious signals that get detected from space. There's nothing new about them. But we found one, and there's one being spoken about now, Ben, that really has piqued my interest. And next week I'm going to get to speak to Brendan Drackler, our little astrophysicist that comes on. He's been to these telescopes that we're going to be talking about today. But they've only gone and detected a new one, and it's real interesting, Ben, because this thing, it's acting very mysteriously indeed, you know? And I'll let you explain to the audience what's going on with it.
Well, this one is different to other radio bursts. I mean, these fast radio bursts have been happening for a long time. There's a guy called Duncan Lorimer who discovered several coming from various parts of the universe. It's hard to say how distant they are, but they're coming. They're surrounding us. They're coming from all over the celestial sphere. No one knows exactly what causes them, except they're very high energy. And if they are as different, some people, I think they've measured them, even though they don't know for sure. They've estimated them to be like 8 billion light years away, yet they're very powerful, and they appear to be. They must be some kind of targeted thing, like they are a narrow beam, and what's causing them is not known. However, what we found out is that a new one has been discovered, which it comes in a cycle. It's like a pulse. It has a 16-day cycle, and this has been discovered by the University of Toronto, and we don't know exactly what it is, but again, what's causing them? I mean, what it could be, and this is one of the things that the people at SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, have talked about, is if you see regular signals coming from space, it could be of an intelligent source. And I mean, it's not necessarily, because in the 60s there was a big fuss about the signal picked up by an astronomer called Susan Jocelyn Bell, which she nicknamed LGM, Little Green Men, because it had a regular. It was a pulse which had a regular pattern like this, only it was several times a second. And she turned out that it was actually from a rotating neutron star, which she called a pulsar. And there are several of these things called pulsars that have been discovered. This might be something similar, or it might be something that is somehow caused by some kind of intelligence. I don't know, but I tell you what, it's an exciting thing to realize that these things do exist in the universe.
Yeah, Ben, this is what kind of excites me. You know, this whole 16-day cycle. And you can imagine how it went down, right? Because they would have been sitting there, they've got the initial bursts, and I believe it was 2 an hour they were getting. This was going on for what, 4 days, and then they disappeared. I would imagine there would have been a heck of an anticlimax at the chime, the telescope, one of the ones that were responsible for picking this up. And then 12 days later, you know, almost like clockwork, this regularity, this is what really gets me. You know, beep, beep, it starts up again. And I did title it tonight, you know, First Contact, question mark. Now, I don't know if this per se is first contact, but it's one of the ways it could happen, Ben, right? We pick up on one of these radio signals, either purposely looking for communication, or it may be leaking out from its own atmosphere, stuff like that. So this one, the fact that it is quite mysterious, it's 500 light years away in another galaxy. I don't know, it's just this picture I get in my mind, you know. It's on for 4 days and then it's off for 12. It's almost as if it's something maybe spinning on an orbit. I know I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but perhaps we are looking at some regular signal coming off a planet beaming out.
It could be. I mean, it reminds me of the film Contact. I mean, you've called this show First Contact. The film Contact, which has Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey, is very good, because there is a scene where there's a very interesting scene. They actually pick up a radio signal from space, and it was like this. Is like pulses, and it turns out these pulses actually have like encoded information and things like that. Excuse me. It's hard to say. I don't think they've detected any. They've not detected any information in these things, but obviously something this powerful from 500 light years away, it has to have some kind of cause. It can't just come out of nowhere. It's not background noise. And so what is the cause? I mean, there are things out there that generate a lot of energy, but this is different. This is different to, I think, what people are aware of, what they know about.
Yeah, and if we come to this, I've got another website here called sciencenews.org. And what it says is one of the known repeaters has a relatively brief window of activity, about every 16 days. And researchers reported on January 28th at arxiv.org. I think that's where you put like papers, scientific papers, That means something about the source or its environment is reliably controlling the burst activity, a potential clue to the true nature of these enigmatic objects. And Dongzi Li, an astrophysicist at the University of Toronto, and colleagues found the pattern in data from the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, or CHIME, and that's in British Columbia. And they determined that the fast radio burst blasts out 1 to 2 radio bursts per hour for 4 days and goes silent for 12, and then usually repeating the cycle. Wow.
That's strange,
Isn't it?
I mean,
Isn't it?
you know, wow is the right word, because this is similar to the wow signal.
And then Duncan Lorimer, who you quoted, he's actually quoted here as saying this is very significant. He's an astrophysicist at the West Virginia University in Morgantown, and the co-discoverer, like Ben said, of the first FRB. Quote, it's potentially going to take us in an interesting direction to get to the bottom of these repeaters. Now, one possible explanation for the periodicity is that the FRB is orbiting something else, perhaps a black hole. In that case, the 16-day period might reveal how often the source of radio waves is pointed towards Earth. Interesting, huh?
It could be that. I mean, the wow signal, it's actually something that happened a long time ago in the 70s. But it's like that. There was a signal picked up by Jerry Elner, and he actually wrote wow on the computer printout, and it's actually referred to in this article, or one of the articles you sent me.
Yeah, you can see it in one of them, yeah.
Yeah, it's... and that's never been solved, but it is what's known as the hydrogen channel. And according to the SETI experts, they said that, well, if the aliens didn't know how to communicate with us, they didn't know what kind of frequency we would use, they would encode the frequency of hydrogen at its lowest energy state, because it's the most basic form of matter. Now, I've got some problems with that idea. I don't think that necessarily follows. But the wow signal did happen to be on the hydrogen channel, and it's never been repeated, but it's never been solved. There's several other instances like it. Some of them have shown to have a natural explanation, like the LGM. However, this so far doesn't. Now, if it's orbiting, I mean, I don't know if this could actually be imaged by telescopes. They can actually get a look at it, because it's so far away. It may not be possible. And a lot of these gamma ray bursts and fast radio bursts, they have no obvious source. They can't be. There's nothing there you can see which is saying, well, this is where it's coming from. But they're so powerful, there must be something generating them. Now, if you wanted to communicate with, if you were, for example, a kind of alien civilization that wanted to communicate with somebody light years away, you might do this. You might target certain galaxies or clusters of stars with beams of radio waves. It depends what kind of mindset you have, whether you're the kind of people who would. I mean, I've done a whole presentation on the SETI issue, and so these things are always interesting, Kev. But of course, as far as I'm concerned, the aliens are already here. So
and for me, I mean, any story like this, right? I'm not meaning this one particularly. I'm not like saying this is the one for the audience out there. But in my mind's eye, like, you've wrote a book about stuff like this before, right? And yeah, my eye got caught there. Sorry. This is how it would begin. You'd get a story like this coming out to the public, right? And then what would happen is, maybe another story a couple of weeks later, a follow-up on this, Ben. And it would be building up, and then you'd get the TTSA coming with something new. You see where I'm going? You see how this is how it could all... I'm not saying this is, but anytime I see a story like this, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, Kev, this is how it all begins.
Did you think that this actually could? I mean, because any
of them could be, Ben. You know what I'm saying, though? I mean, any one could be used as a springboard, a kind of story to get the public's attention. I can imagine this will do the rounds, this story. You add it into everything that's been going on for 2 years with TTSA, all of that. We've got another compelling video that we both seen today, and we're going to talk about as the show progresses. Things are picking up, Benny boy, for some kind of disclosure, man. some
This
kind.
it's true, you know, if there was some kind of agenda to slowly introduce people to the idea of extraterrestrial civilizations, it might come through the SETI project. Now, as I've said before, if something is picked up by the SETI movement, then there's no way it could be concealed. It couldn't be covered up in any way. There's just too many telescopes, too many astronomers, too many people. The flow of information is very different, for example, than ufology. However, it could be they've chosen to highlight certain mysteries associated with the universe in the media just to get people used to the idea, or maybe even just have a look at how people respond to it. So whoever's behind this may be watching this program now and seeing how many listeners we get and what the comments are and things like that. Who knows, Kev? I've often said, Stanton Friedman in particular was very scathing about this, the late great researcher of Roswell. He called SETI silly effort to investigate and believed that this was actually part of the cover-up. And indeed, Stephen Bassett has expanded on this point even more. And I see what they're saying. I really do, because if everyone's looking up into the sky, like Carl Sagan said, oh, there's nothing to look at down here. UFOs are all nonsense. Carl Sagan, who was a major popularizer of the SETI movement, he wrote a book called, I think it was called Life in the Universe. I think it was in about 1966 this came out, which really caught the public's imagination. However, that same man, for his entire career, referred to UFOs several times and never changed his position. Despite the overwhelming evidence which says otherwise, he just kept repeating the same thing over and over again, to the point where I felt he doth protest too much. And I did wonder exactly what this guy's actual plan was and what he really knew behind the scenes, because he had lots of friends in the scientific world, and Arthur C. Clarke and people like that, and within the government and military, academia, things like that. He was very high up, very well connected. So we could, if, for example, someone's decided to come clean or give us some information, even if it's just like fake disclosure, which I've always said is probably the most likely kind we'll get initially, unfortunately, as is the case in my book, there could well be some kind of preparation, a little aperitif to see how it goes down before the main course.
You could be right there, brother. You could be right there, because we've been keeping our eye on the whole disclosure thing for a while. But again, I'm just talking in general terms for the audience out there. Don't hang me for this. Don't come back a month from now and go, Kev, you were absolutely wrong. I'm just saying, this is how it might start. But I want to play a quick super chat we got there from Karen, because very on point.
Brian's Dream 2020 is the year for contact. I am not alone.
You see, Brian is our little voice that talks. He speaks out the super chats, and he's had a dream that 2020 might be the year for first contact. Karen, thank you so much. I'm so silly. I didn't even know who Karen was referring to when she said Brian there. I'm thinking, who's Brian? Then I remembered he's my trusty AI assistant. But yeah, the whole SETI thing, I'm on the fence about that as well, Ben. I imagine if they ever did find anything really interesting, the first the phone call they have to make would be to the Pentagon. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know. But this signal, we're going to have to keep an eye on it, because like Duncan Lorimer says, and you'd have to class that man as an expert in these things, as expert as you can be in something mysterious that you can't physically touch, you know what I mean? But it'd be interesting to see what comes on the back of this now, what they determine theoretically it might be, because like you rightly said, Ben, even getting to a look at what might be there could be beyond us at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what I'll do is, after the show, I'll share with you this video I found, which is actually from BBC Horizon. It's not as good as it should be, but it's still quite interesting because it goes into this subject in detail. It's only about 3/4 of an hour. It's worth watching. But it is perfectly possible that SETI will pick up something. I mean, a lot more is being done with SETI than has ever been done before. The technology to analyze radio data is higher than it's ever been before, because the big problem that SETI has had since it began in 1961 is there's just so much noise. It's hard to get the signal. It's like listening for a whisper at a rock concert. And now, though, we have the computer technology to sort it all out. It's going to take a long time. If there are signals from extraterrestrials, they've probably already been picked up and they're lying in some data bank somewhere on a hard drive, waiting just to be analysed and waiting to be processed.
This is what I think, Ben. I think with AI as well, with software programs, these kind of packages, no fancy like Terminator AI, just something really designed to pick out the noise from the signal, or the signal from the noise, should I say? And it's very likely we could already be sitting with that in the archive somewhere.
It's exciting to think, yeah.
And remember, we're looking for alien signals that we've determined will be the way that alien signals will appear. Maybe within the data, because it can see patterns that we don't see, over time it'll be able to look at everything all at once. There might be something that we've not even thought of, Ben, and it's been there the whole time. And because we've never even considered that as any form of communication or some kind of order to it, that kind of thing excites me. Because like I say, I think we've probably already got the data. We just haven't understood it.
I think that it'd be difficult to predict how an extraterrestrial civilization would communicate with us. I mean,
Exactly.
some of the witnesses to alien contact, that is the abductees and contactees, they've reported a similar problem in that they sometimes feel they're not on the same mindset as the creatures that they have encounters with. And that applies to SETI as well. And the idea that, they'll use the hydrogen channel, they'll use radio waves, they're just like us, really. That is a very prodigal assumption. I don't think we should put ourselves in the aliens' shoes, even if they have 2 feet. So we should just keep a more open mind about how they might communicate, what they might be, things like that. But I think, despite the fact that I agree with Steve Bassett and Stanton Friedman that this whole thing essentially is being used as a distraction from ufology, and it is, any success that SETI achieves, which I think in the end is guaranteed to happen sooner or later, it's only a matter of time, will have a good knock-on effect on ufology. If it's meant to be a cover-up, it will backfire if it succeeds. And as I said, there can't be a cover-up within SETI, and it'll draw people's attention skywards. It'll get people looking at the stars, looking upwards, and thinking about things they've never thought before. And sooner or later, at least some of those people will move their gaze from the stars to the ground, and to the fact, and it is a fact that I think is certain, is the aliens aren't out there. They're down here with us. They've already found us. I think they found us a long time ago, and that is going to sooner or later that is going to come out one way or another. That fact is going to become public knowledge. So I'm excited by this, Kev. I look forward to more information.
Yeah, it's exciting times. It really is, and I agree with you, Ben. This information is going to come out. I can't tell people when or exactly how, but it's all part of this revealing, this apocalypse that many of us talk about. And I'm like you. I mean, I don't think it's a case of if they're out there. It's more a case of just how often they've been here, how much contact have we had, how much influence do they have over us as well. And then who knows. And of course all of this, and we're coming up on the break, but what a perfect time to wind down and get ready for something else that's going on that really does fit in with all of the general disclosure talk we're talking about here. And that is, of course, Benny Boy, the launching of Space Force. Oh, yes. We'll need to get into that after the break. But before we go, man, tell people where they can find your work and when you're going to be speaking next as well.
Yeah, everything you want to know about me can be found at my websites, and I've got several of them. But if you put in HPANWO, HPANWO, that's Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, you will find for instance, you've got the HPANWO Voice, my news site. That's probably the best one to go to first. It's the one I update most often. I try to update it every day. And if you go to that one, you'll find all kinds of material, plus links to my YouTube channel, my own radio shows, and some of my fictional work and things like that. So please do check those out. I'm speaking at the Research and Witness Convention in Hull, which is on the 29th of February to the 1st of March. It's the weekend where the month changes, and it's go to Rawcon. Just put in Rawcon, RAWCON. You'll find me. I'm going to be talking there about the witchcraft trial, which is a subject you and I have discussed, Kev. It's a Scottish, well, it's not a Scottish case, but it's about a Scottish woman.
Yeah, Lancaster. Is it Pendle Hill?
It's actually Helen Duncan.
Oh, the hell! Yeah, you know,
1944 witchcraft trial.
we mentioned her on the show on one of the streams recently. And get this, Ben, because we've had such many waves, in fact, of people waking up and starting to look at this kind of information. Helen Duncan is still relatively an unknown kind of story. And I know you've got a video on your YouTube, but I think it's in the hundreds of thousands. I may be wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't wait, you know, to hear about how that conference went. And if you can get there, folks, go and see Ben talking. He is one of the most... And there's the break. We missed the music. We're out here. Hang on. You see, the conversation with Benny Boy here, it just gets too good, Ben. I get all excited, and then before I know it, we're out to break. But we're still on YouTube. We're still here with our...
I've got to head off for a couple of minutes, but I'll be back, Kev.
Don't you worry about that. Don't you worry about that. I've always got something to talk about. And then, Anne almost got her head on camera there. See, audience, you thought she was a headless bio robot, didn't you? You did. Or either that, or you thought I literally might live with AOC. That's why she didn't want to show herself on camera and things. Not that she's embarrassed by me or anything like that. Yeah, a big shout out to Blue Days in the chat room. She gave birth to a little boy the other day, Caleb. And we have our newest Wookiee in the KBS family. Blue Days was in labour for over 50 hours, Anne. Indeed. So if I had a hat on right now, Blue, I would doff it to you. Honestly. You know, I don't care how big and strong us toxic males are. There's absolutely none of us will ever experience what you women go through. And dang, girl, hats off and a big lots of love to you and your family. Honestly, it's been great having you around here in the chat room, and yeah, congrats. It's our newest Wookiee. So in the chat room before Ben comes back, who else we got in there? You see, this is how I roll. I'll give you a little shout out. You know, we've got Zanny Banani, Jimmy's in there, the Welsh Ripper. Who else? If I pop out the participants, that'd be a lot quicker, right? We got Polly, Jason, Blues in there, obviously. DJ Rustler, Eli. That was the funniest comment I've heard in ages. He said, Dave Baker, Bruce Lipton, and Ben tonight. It's an inside joke. You had to be there on the stream. Chris Fjord. Chris, I'm so sorry I didn't get back to your super chat last night. Mammoth had reminded me about it, so I'll play it again in a moment as well, because I played it on the stream earlier. If I don't play it on this break, I'll get it on the next one. But I've got you, brother. I've got you. We've got Littlefoot, one of our newest members. Mammoth's in there. Who else we got? Nothing As It Seems, Optimist, Pedro, Tessa, Russell, Queen, Trent, Valley. I think I got just about everyone that's chatting. Thank you all for being here today. Love it when Ben's in town. Look at the pile of books that man has there. It's probably a week's reading for Ben. Honestly. Hey, Resolution in there. I'm not saying your first name. That's a naughty algorithm name. So, Kev, big shout out to you, man. Last night. Yes, indeed. Lulu as well. Here he is. He's coming back. They're the big man. It's Benny Boy. A living being. Shout out to you, Ellie. Yeah, first time here. Elle, it's great to have you here. Now, we're going to be going back to the network in just a moment. But yeah, Ben, are you fresh? Are you set to go, man? Are we good for it?
I am, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. I was just giving the audience a little shout out there, you know, as you do.
Oh,
how's your live streams been going, Ben?
Well, not bad. I had a few technical problems on the last one, so apologies to everyone who experienced that. I did they were warning me about it, and I couldn't actually detect it myself, and I thought it might be a problem at their end, but it does appear to be a mine. But hopefully I'll get that sorted out for the next one, so fingers crossed for that.
Here we go, Ben. We're going back to the mothership. Welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, time travelers, interdimensional creepers, he, she's, theys, it's, whatever you are, wherever you are, whenever you are. Got Ben Emlyn-Jones in the house today, and that means we are going light speed into some space woo. Have we made first contact? We went over a story about a intriguing fast radio burst that seems to be very, very uniform in the signal it's sending. It goes for twice an hour for 4 days, then it disappears for 12 days, and then it comes back and it starts it all over again. And that was a really good springboard into a discussion about the more general topic of signals from space, first contact, aliens being here, how long they've been here, just how much of an influence they've had. And Ben is probably one of the best guys out of the UK I can think of to talk to all of this and so much more. And while all of this is going on, we've had the launch of the Space Force, Ben. It's like living in the early days of the Federation. We're going Star Trek, man. What's happening?
Yeah, this is really quite interesting. I mean, it's something I think we covered on a previous show, that the United States now has its very own Space Force, and I think several other countries do as well. But it's all official. I mean, the whole thing, which everyone thought would laughed at a little bit, is now up and running. In fact, there was a ceremony to actually swear in for him to have his oath of office. General John W. Raymond, who is the first ever commissioned officer and with the United States Space Force, and he's actually the first head of the United States Space Force. And he sits on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the committee at the Pentagon, which runs the U.S. Armed Forces. And there was like a short ceremony where Mike Pence, the Vice President, who seems to be behind all this, gave him the Bible. He put his hand on it, and he's standing there in his new uniform with the I think it's the same as the Air Force uniform. It's the same colour, but it's got different badges on. Some people have made a fuss about that, but it's obvious.
I did have a bit of a tongue-in-cheek laugh when I seen one of them also wearing like combat fatigues for, you know, somewhere that's obviously got conifers and a lot of foliage, green, brown. I don't know if it's really going to be the good look for space. I'd really hoped, Ben, that they would have a bit of a sense of humour. Even Mike Pence might have came out in full, like, Star Trek regalia. I mean, the guy there, he's almost looking like Jean-Luc Picard. We could have had Picard signing it. Come on, when you got Donald Trump in the White House, everything's theatre, right?
I was hoping there'd be like the tunics that they wear on Star Trek.
Be awesome, wouldn't it?
Even like the T-shirts they have on the first original series. But it's obvious they're using like the standard is the blue Air Force suits, and then there's the DPM utilities, which again is odd. These are things for land forces where they have to, it's camouflage basically, and you think, well, wouldn't it be better to have sort of stars or planets as camouflage on the uniform? But of course, the reason is, of course, that it's cheaper because the tailor doesn't have to create a complete new line. They can just carry on with the ones they already do, and they can just and then the forces can just put different badges on it. So it's obviously much cheaper for them to use the same outfits. But it'd be quite amusing. I think it's going to be quite amusing to see like Space Force guys wearing these land force utilities, because I think to myself, what are they invading? Are they going to land on Endor, or something like that, where there's like woods and forests and bushes and things? Do you know what I mean?
Yep. And somebody was mentioning Space Force, not Space Force, sorry, but Bluebeam over in the chat room there, Ben. And yeah, I mean, Project Bluebeam comes into the conversation a heck of a lot. And when you look into Bluebeam, it's very interesting. And, you know, the last card, the fake alien invasion, whatever, but you probably know more about this than me because you're way more researched than I am. But I'm sure when you look into Project Bluebeam, wasn't that the brainchild, or at least a story that came from a Canadian writer/researcher who claimed to have got a document from NASA, but nobody ever was really able to verify the kind of credibility of the document. Now, that's not to say it's wrong, but I think a lot of people just automatically assume that's officially from NASA's kind of archive somewhere, when really, you know, I don't know, it's a good idea. Whether it's certainly one way that they could bring about some kind of global change to fake an alien thing, and they've got the technology now, you know.
Well, yeah,
and again, at one stage of Bluebeam is preparing the public, and we talked about the stories in the first half, be it FRBs, be it SETI. You know, you set the stage, and then the next phase leading up to the Space Force fighting holographic images in the sky, maybe.
it's something that can't be ruled out. I mean, I remember when Project Bluebeam first emerged, and yeah, it can't be ruled out that it was just a hoax. I don't think it's ever been verified that it existed.
Yeah,
However,
again, that's why I say, you know, I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm not like throwing it out. But at the same time, we must keep an open mind.
well, I do wonder if there is some kind of plan for some kind of deception, because to be honest, you don't need any new technology to create fake images in the sky. It's perfectly possible to do it, in fact, using various methods. I've seen fake images in the air, created by lasers, but using laser beams. It's a holographic projection. There's even 3D images of Michael Jackson dancing on stage, and I saw a somewhat cruder version of that when I was a kid at Thorpe Park, which was in the 80s. So it's not inconceivable. I've always said that the most likely disclosure will be fake disclosure, and the reasons for that, there's several. If they're unable to suppress the truth of the extraterrestrial phenomenon, they could come out and admit that they exist with the proviso that they're hostile and intend us harm. Because that would create that for two reasons. Firstly, it would justify increased internationalism and authoritarianism in the form of a global state of emergency to save the planet, like in Independence Day. But it would also, the second benefit for their point of view, it would negate the credibility obstacles that would be in their path, which they would inevitably face, because they would not only have a problem of UFOs and be possibly hostile, but they're going to have to find some explanation for why they lied to us for all this time that these things existed, going back to Roswell, indeed I believe before Roswell. They have to explain that, and the best way to explain it is to come up with an excuse, and it will be something like, look, we didn't want to lie for you we didn't want to lie to you people for all these years, but we had to protect you.
Yeah.
It was a matter of national security, because these aliens are evil, you see. We've been fighting them secretly, and now we're telling you. Of course, that may not be true. It doesn't have to be true, but it would be the perfect way of kind of digging themselves out of this hole. Because they say, look, you're going to have to just forgive us, and we're going to have to unite to save the planet. We'll sort out the rights and wrongs afterwards, okay? Do you see what I mean?
Yep.
Right. It's so that unfortunately is the most likely outcome. And there's a guy actually called what's his name? Randy Kramer. Now
I've had Captain K on the show years ago. Yep, yeah, I've had Captain K on, man. You know, for me, out of all the people to claim to have been part of secret space programs and everything else, now, again, this doesn't prove anything. And I'm not saying that I'm 100% on board with everything, every element of the story, but for me, he's always been the most credible. And here's another reason why I think that, Ben. His story has always been his story, There's never been, like, when that story started to die off, he had a new memory of something else, like a new episode, a new element to the story come along. Because I'm very wary when that happens. Because it's almost like the impact of the first story's waning, so there's a need to get that traffic again, so they miraculously remember another outing that they had sometime. But Randy Kramer's story has always just been his story, and that was it. No, he stuck to
the same story. That's a good sign, like you say, because people who make things up, firstly, there will inevitably be inconsistencies because they're not remembering a real event, and also, like, if they're just seeking publicity, that's also suspicious. There's several people.
And the reason I can't say I'm 100% on is because if you were a part of one of these super, like, secret soldiers, Space Force, like before the real Space Force were here and here, then you're talking about the same military-industrial complex that we know use mind control, can implant memories, can take memories away. So even although the individual themselves, they might have that memory, Ben, we can't reliably know if it was a true memory or something they were given.
It's like Bob Lazar. I mean, it's very similar to Bob Lazar. Now, the reason I bring up Kramer is because he says something very interesting. He did a talk where he says something which, I mean, I don't agree with it, but it's an interesting idea, which is that perhaps a fake alien invasion is not a bad idea for the purposes of disclosure, because it would be the best way of introducing the whole idea of extraterrestrial life to the public. Well, his thesis is this. He says that let's have a fake alien invasion. The government can then respond and beat the nasty aliens, and then the public will be satisfied with that. And the reason he says that is because he seems to have a very low opinion of people in general. He's a bit of a misanthropist, perhaps. But he says that you can't just say they're aliens because everyone's going to panic. Everyone will panic, and well, I mean, I'm not so sure that's the case actually. People
not anymore, Ben. Not in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, whenever people say this, a lot of people brought this up. Timothy Good actually takes a very similar line to Randy Kramer, and my response is, well, what about you? Would you panic? And they say, oh no, I'd be fine. It's other people who would panic. And then I was thinking, right, okay. So I go around and I ask other people this, and they say, oh no, I wouldn't panic, but you know, all the others would. I'd be fine. And when you've gone round enough of those people, I sometimes think to myself, okay, if they just think they're not going to panic, but everyone else is, perhaps very few people would. Now, I think there would be, among some people would react badly to this. Yeah. I really do. I think they would. And that could be a problem. But I don't think it justifies the secrecy or the revelation of the secrecy through some kind of weird kind of reverse psychology that Kramer suggests, and I think we should roll the dice and take a risk. I mean, my position is let's just come clean. Just tell people.
I mean, people that are really staunch Christians are going to see this as like, if it was to happen, an invasion of demonic forces. Literally the end times battle is upon us, and you can imagine people like that. And it's no criticism, it's not any insult or anything. But people that are really staunch, I mean, I don't know how it would all translate to them, how they would interpret aliens turning up. And then you look at all the different other faiths, all the beliefs. Everyone's going to have their own take on it. I'd like to think we're all growing up enough now as like a species to be able to accept that. And I think most polls, Ben, when you like survey people, I think now the majority very open to it. In fact, most just accept that we're not alone. Most are just waiting to be given the official word.
I think there would be some people who react badly to it, like you said. Some people, like if they go to the clapperboard churches in the American Midwest, go to some place in the Middle East. Well, maybe not the Middle East, because I think Muslims would probably react a lot better. But go to certain communities, certain cultures, certain groups of people. I mean, there would be consternation. And there would be disbelief and shock among some people. I mean, I think the people who'd be worst affected would be the skeptics, quite frankly, because this would be, to quote Bryce Zabel, this would be their 9/11. I mean, it would be disaster for them because the humble pie they'd have to eat. But I reckon there must be some way of doing this properly. I mean, I personally think that human beings are quite robust creatures. We're able to adjust. We're able to transform our own lives personally. I mean, whether you win the lottery or you're sent to jail, people change. People adapt. We are adaptable. There's no doubt about that. We also are quite stoic in certain situations when it comes to hardship. For example, in World War II, we in Britain in World War II, faced enormous hardships. We faced the Blitz. We faced rationing. We faced having our sons and our husbands and fathers going off to fight in wars and coming back dead in many cases. We stuck together. We had the Blitz spirit, and we got through it. And perhaps I think we could do that again. It's interestingly, that's actually funny I brought that up because, Winston Churchill talked about UFOs in the 50s. Because he actually had an official UFO investigation project, which has only recently come out. It's only recently resurfaced, and he said that, oh no, we can't tell the people. You can't tell British people. This has got to be classified for 50 years or longer, because of the public reaction to it. And it's odd because this was just after the war, and he'd seen what the British people were capable of dealing with. Yet he himself believed that this is something that British people couldn't. I mean, like as with Randy Kramer, I don't agree with him, but it's odd that people have that. There is this attitude, and it's almost like maybe this is among people who perhaps know something we don't, and perhaps even maybe Kramer himself hasn't revealed everything yet.
Exactly, Ben. Exactly. For anyone out there, you know, that may have thought we're having a go at Christians. No, we're not. What we're saying is, in the Islamic faith, by my understanding, the little that I know, the jinn are not translated into what we would call UFOs. The jinn, their demonic entities, their dark entities are something completely separate. And that's why Ben was saying there would probably be a different reaction in the Islamic world. It was in no way bashing anybody. It was how people would interpret the same information but with different belief systems. That's all. It's not bashing, it's an observation. I just wanted to clear that up for anyone out there, because neither me or Ben tried to bash anyone unless you're a fully fledged SJW and you're woke to the high heavens. And then maybe I wouldn't even bash you. I would have to have a conversation with you, but I wouldn't bash you. But yeah, sorry about that, Ben, but I just don't want anyone thinking that we're having a go at anyone. This is the most inclusive, woke word. Irony there, eh? But yeah, we think about everybody here. We try to include all belief systems, okay? So, yes, indeed.
I don't want anyone to think that I was having a go at anyone, because I really wasn't.
Ben, I know you too well, and that's why I'll speak up for you on that one, brother. Not that you need speaking up for. It was just maybe, you know, maybe it needed a little further explaining. That's all. And you've got another story that you've been looking into that ties in with all of this, I think. And it's the Nimitz. What's been going on there, man? Come on.
Well, since the last show, there's been some discussion about what's really happening behind the scenes, and amazingly, there's been a rather strange discovery. There's been a rather strange admission by the government that they have more information out there. They have more footage, and possibly some kind of telemetry, so discs and things like that, which would be very, very exciting. Because, of course, there are 3 clips now of what looks like some strange object flying in the sky, which were filmed from US Navy jets. And indeed, several pilots now come forward. There was a guy called David Fravor who came forward first of all. He's been joined by others such as Chad Underwood, and I think there's one more. And there's other people on the ships who are radar operators and things like that who come forward. Now, over the years since this came out in December 2017, there's been increasing numbers of more information that's been revealed about what is actually going on. And, for example, the revelation that this is official footage, that the ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, actually existed. And now there's been a report that, well, we have more footage or more data, more evidence that has not yet been declassified. And what's interesting is it appears that the declassification, I mean, what's his name? The Black Vault, Greenwald, John Greenwald.
John Greenwald, yeah.
He did a thing about this, and he's actually done a written interview with Luis Elizondo. I'm waiting for the video one, because that will be an absolute classic, I'm sure. But from what I gather, if I remember correctly, the declassification is not so much the nature, the content of the material. It's more to do with the technicalities related to intelligence gathering, sources, technology methods, things like that. So it's not the content itself, it's what the content could reveal about the capabilities.
Yeah, national security type stuff.
The capabilities of the US Navy, which they don't want to be revealed. I really would look forward to Greenwald if he interviews Elizondo, because Greenwald's quite cautious and he asks good questions.
You know, for me, he's I class him as probably being one of the most legitimate, almost mainstreamish type reporter on these topics. And I say almost mainstreamish. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean the fact that you know, he's one of the more authoritative of the alternative media. You know, if he's put something out there, you know, he's researched it and he's got documents to back it up. You know. Yeah,
exactly. If he says something's legit, then he's not somebody who says things like that lightly.
And he started as a child, you know. I think I was co-hosting on one show with Ella Free on the network, and because Ella knew it would be like a big kind of bucket list almost to get to speak to John, she invited me to co-host for one of the shows, and he was telling how I think it was 15, 16. That's when he put in his first Freedom of Information request. Really young guy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
He's been
and
doing this for
he's
years,
been
hasn't
doing
he?
it ever since. And he just wanted to know, he wanted to have it in black and white. He's like us, he's passionate, but he wants to know what he can prove, what they've actually got on paper kind of thing. So I really like him. Richard Dolan as well. Would you recommend him to people?
Definitely,
Ben, yeah.
Richard Dolan's his videos on this subject are also very informative, and are really, he's excited about this whole thing, and I'm excited about it. I mean, we still don't know for sure what's going on, but
Yeah.
I mean, if they're saying, "Well, we've got more material now," it may be possible to edit it in a way that it can be declassified, because because the fact that they've said this means that the content itself, like I said, is not regarded as sensitive as perhaps it might used to have been. Now, the content, and Nick Pope actually did an interview where he talks about this, and I mean, I'm not a big Nick Pope fan, I have to say, but what he said this time was quite interesting, in that it could be more footage, it could be perhaps more detailed footage from the Navy, or longer clips and things like that, but it could include telemetry, it could include data, just print out sheets from the radar, from electronic support measures, and maybe other forms of different kinds of grayscale imaging and things like that, which could reveal an awful lot more about what the pilots were seeing. We could have, like, for instance, firing solutions and things like that, which will give the course, speed, altitude, things like that. That could tell us a hell of a lot about what is actually being seen, because there were people coming out saying, "Oh, it's a seagull. Oh, it's a drone. It's all these other things." So we want to get to the bottom of it and find out what exactly is being seen. We know that Fravor and the other pilots say they've got experience, they're trained to spot weird things in the sky and known aircraft and stuff like that. And they said, this is not anything that's built by the hand of man. I'm willing to accept their expert opinion on that. But it'd be great to have confirmation through independent data, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and Richard Dolan, he was with his wife recently on a live stream, and I'm not sure if it was anything to do with this Nimitz encounter, or it might have been actually a good few years ago, but it was somebody had been in contact with him, and of course it was one of these nameless sources. That doesn't mean it's wrong, doesn't mean it's rubbish, but again, you have to kind of frame it with that. I'm not hiding that from anyone, but it was a fascinating story, Ben, and it was sailors encounter with this object that was maybe twice the size of an American football field. And then a separate story independently that could fit with it, because this object went into the water, and then there was a story of a diver that had gone down to this thing, and they just landed. They couldn't see anything, and then they just hit this solid thing, like a flat surface, and then noticed it was kind of translucent. It was almost like it was cloaked on the bottom. Richard Dolan, it's on his YouTube. A really good story, really interesting. And when we come back after the break, I'll kind of be getting Ben's take again, a little bit more on what he said there, because Nick Pope, he's been in the news, or his name has been in the news again lately, because there's talk of, or they may have already done it, there's been so much other news going on that I've been keeping up with that I might have missed it. A release of the British X-Files, either coming up or they've been done or something, Ben. So I'll be getting into that with you after the break. But again, we got cut off last time, and I'm looking at the clock this time. I won't miss the break this time. I get that excited when you come on, dude. But you were telling us about a conference that you're going to be speaking at. What's the dates for that again, man?
Yes, it's the 29th of February, the 1st of March. It's the last weekend of the month, and it's in Hull, and it's the Research and Witness Convention. And if you put in RAWCON, RAWCON, you'll find that in the website. I'm going to be doing a talk about the witchcraft trial of 1944, and it's a subject you and I have talked about. It concerns a Scottish lady, Helen Duncan, who was a psychic medium, who was actually jailed in very mysterious circumstances. So I'll have a look at that. I'll get you the links, Kev, so you can, because I've got it all written down here on my website, and I'll find it. It's on one of my blogs.
That's fantastic, and we're there.
And I'll get you all the details here.
Yeah, we had Chris in the chat room saying Project Bluebeam will probably be used in conjunction with climate change hysteria Woo, we are aliens. You're destroying your planet. Change now or be destroyed. Hey, that's a
Oh,
good
yeah.
shout. It's a good shout. It's a good scenario, man.
Well, you never know. I mean, well, to be honest, I mean, a lot of extraterrestrials do say strange things. They do say, for example, although they don't mention specifically
no.
climate change.
There's the music.
Oh, right.
I heard the music this time. We'll be back in 3 short minutes for hour number 2 with my good friend, researcher, author, and the Ben X-Files, as I like to call him, Ben Emlyn-Jones. We'll be right back. Yep, there we go. Yeah, I had it all ready today, folks. I had the promo already, the Ben X-Files. I've called the show that a few times.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
Then I came across that whole fast radio burst thing, and it changed the whole complexion of what was going on.
Yeah, but still, I mean, there's always these things are always connected. I find, Kev. You know, like, well, thanks. You've got the right page there. That is the conference. It's going to be at a shopping centre, and it's let's say Hull and Princess Quay Shopping Centre, and it's really cheap. I mean, just look at the price there, Kev. Look how much it costs. That's a whole weekend, £39 for a whole weekend. You will not find a conference cheaper than that. And I know because I booked accommodation there because I'm staying the whole weekend. Hull is a very, very cheap place to stay.
Funny story about Hull before we go back. When I was about to pass out in the army, not literally like from exhaustion, but my pass out parade, it was my mum and my stepdad's first venture down into England, right? And they were driving down to near Oxford, actually, down your way, and they had to stop somewhere. They were stopping for the night, and they went into Hull. And they asked the taxi driver. They had no idea, they're like, where's the best place, cheap place to stay for the night? So the taxi driver said, yeah, no problem, follow him. Took them to this. My mum and stepdad, they were saying it was a really dodgy looking place, Kev. But I thought nothing more, taxi driver, you'd see them, right? You know what I mean? So he points them in the direction of this place. Can't remember the name of it. But my mum and dad went in, and, well, let's put it this way, it was like something out of the Blue Oyster. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it wasn't the kind of place my mum and stepdad were really expecting, and wow.
Man.
So that's one of their main stories. That should have been the proudest weekend of my mother's life. That should be her big story. My son passing out, but no. Anytime she thinks about that, unfortunately, she's scarred with that memory of that taxi driver. If you're listening tonight, I think that's quite funny. I think that's quite humorous.
If you are coming to the conference, please don't try and stay at that place, wherever it is. I mean, if it's got it's got red lights and it's got cockroaches and stuff.
Maybe it's your kind of place. If it's your kind of place, have at it. No, Ben, when we come back after the break, the British X-Files. I don't know if you noticed they were going to be releasing some. I don't know if they actually got on with it and done it.
I saw a news story about it. I didn't look at it in detail, but I didn't see a news story.
I've seen it on Mysterious Universe. I'll try and dig it up in a second as well. But while we're waiting for that, the audience out there, I'm just going to play something just here, if I can just find it really quickly. Where is it now? Where did I put it? It was, this here. I want you to have a quick look at this, folks. This is a video that was filmed by an airlines pilot over Medellin, Colombia, and fascinating UFO footage here. Check this out. Watch now he goes down, looks at the instruments.
That's good.
And then watch for a dark dot coming from the left. There it is there, look, there it is, just there.
Oh.
That is pretty good. That's a good one, isn't it? Very, very intriguing.
Yep.
Now, Ben, you had a closer look at that one, didn't you?
I did. That's an excellent video. I mean, the guy, he did what a good pilot does. He got a shot of the instrument panel and to get altitude, heading, speed, etc. So he knew basically where it's very important for evidence, that is.
Here we go,
and
Ben.
then he filmed it. He did a very.
Sorry, Ben. We need to go back.
Okay.
Here we go. Got my eye on the clock tonight, man. There we go. Hour number 2 already on today's Kev Baker show, coming to you from the smart land in the heartland of Scotland. Yes, smart city, Glasgow. Because obviously we're so intelligent here that we managed to do some Jedi mind trick and win a competition that we never even entered. and that puts me right in the belly of 5G Smart City Glasgow. Ooga booga. It's the right place to be doing a show like this, I'm telling you. But I'm joined tonight by Ben Emlyn-Jones. And Ben, you know, hour number 2 already. This has been, in my opinion, you know, 2020 has been a hectic year for a number of reasons. But this show tonight, it's almost been lockstep with that kind of fast pace of 2020. We've been really getting into some really good space kind of news tonight. We've been getting into the whole fast radio bursts that have been detected. We then segued into the Space Force. And then just before the break, we're talking about the USS Nimitz and disclosure and information coming out. And you mentioned Nick Pope. Now, Nick Pope is one of the few people who I haven't had on the show. Yet, maybe, never. But we've got maybe a different opinion of Nick. But his name was in the papers again recently. There's going to be a big release of the British UFO files. Get ready, folks. The X-Files are coming. I'm obviously being quite sarcastic there because I don't think our smoking gun's going to come from these files. I don't even know if they've come out yet, Ben. What's happening there? Do you think this is going to be the big aha moment?
Probably not.
No, it's going to be sketches. It'll be a sketch of like a little green man and things like that. It's ridiculous.
And we know how the media are going to cover this, and indeed, Nick actually likes to rear them up with this. It's all a part of his mystique, so he won't try to discourage them from it. I have seen this story mentioned, which I've not looked into in detail. It's actually one of a series of releases, actually. Now, so there's been several declassifications of UFO sightings reports from the Ministry of Defence, and Nick Pope has been instrumental in organising this. Firstly, as a member of the UFO hunting team at the Secretariat AS2, the UFO desk at the Ministry of Defence, and secondly, as an independent journalist working freelance, he's been a part of this. Now, this process has been going on for several years. The files are very large, and they used to be free, but you could get them from the National Archives, and now I think you have to pay a small fee for them. It's worth getting them just to look at them. And indeed, Nick has put together a highlights file, which has been very useful actually to get what he believes is all the best cases. But there are literally thousands of these reports. They're voluminous. And most of them are really not very interesting. In fact,
Ben, that's a good word. Give us that one again.
Voluminous.
Oh, I like that one, man. Dang, dude, I like a good word,
That's the writer
Ben.
in me coming out, Kev.
Oh,
yeah.
I like a good word, man. Nice.
I have to look these things up when I'm doing my books.
Oh, I tell you, dude.
You know, the whole thing about them is most of them are literally just man walking his dog on Cannock Chase, sees lights in sky, 11 p.m. this particular date, etc., etc. Some of them are more interesting, and I mean, in all modesty, I think the one I reported to the MOD, which I did, mine might well be in this satchel batch. I haven't seen it in any of the previous ones. Is I saw a circular object. It's in Oxford. It's quite interesting. So that might be on the highlights list. I don't know, but I think it deserves to be. I know that that these files all, when they were actually sent in, they were classified as confidential, not top secret, which means that the saucer in the hangar, to quote Nick Pope himself, is probably not there. You're probably not going to find these in these. In fact, you won't find something that significant in these particular files. What you'll find is that the files themselves will have been checked for security purposes, but it's more to comply with the Data Protection Act than anything else than that. For example, they're going to have to make sure that people's addresses are blanked out and things like that. You know,
when I was in the army, you know, because I was in the signals, I had a pretty high clearance. Unfortunately, I'd love to sit here and tell you I just remembered last night that I seen all this material, but no, I never seen anything like that. But I'll tell you something, Ben. You know, when I was in, the people I met around me, you know, all shapes and sizes and ranks, you know, very open to the whole UFO thing. You know, it used to be something we would talk about. You'd be on guard or sometimes on exercise, you know, staggering through the night, trying to stay awake and be looking at, it's the kind of thing you'd talk about. And again, you know, I would imagine though, if the military does have information like that, like I say, I was cleared to a pretty high clearance. I'd have been the one getting the messages in, and we were some of the only people that were allowed to tell the commanding officer of the base to go away and not come in, because sometimes they wouldn't be cleared. So that's
Yes,
the kind
need
of
to know.
level of messaging coming into a ComSen. But there's way, I used to know myself, there was like levels way beyond that, like way beyond. And we hear about how you get these cosmic clearances all the way up. The president's only so far up to be cleared things. My point being, Ben, any freedom of information request, any release, yeah, fair dues, they'll release us things. But there's some things that, in the end of the day, they're just never going to release to you. There's just no need for anyone to see it outside of whoever's seen it and who needs to know. And that's the way I see the military rolling because I've been in it.
Yeah, it's, you know very well that, like, there's like a need to know means that if you're involved personally with something, you might be part of your duty. In fact, this counts for other areas of government service, including the health service actually, and perhaps certain corporations and things like that. If you have a role in a particular operation, you will carry out that role. You may not necessarily be allowed to talk about that with other people, even people within your own unit or your own regiment or your own department.
Yep.
You could be told this is strictly a part of this operation. You can't discuss it anywhere else. That being said, you may well have encountered some people, especially if in your particular trade, you may have encountered other people within that trade who had been involved in things to do with UFOs, and perhaps this is where their open-mindedness comes from. So even if they weren't allowed to divulge their roles to you while you were like chatting, it's possible they wanted to just have a little word with you and maybe drop plant some seeds, things like that. There's no law against that. They can't stop you speaking generally about a subject, even though you can't divulge specifics about it. So who knows, Kev? Who knows? I mean, it's quite likely. I think there are a lot of people in this world walking around with secrets.
Yeah, big time.
Definitely. And they're bound by
Sometimes
security
those
oaths.
secrets are what's enabling them to keep walking about. The fact that they haven't given them up,
Well, I think about Lieutenant Walter Howard, who was the press officer at the Roswell Army Air Force Base in 1947. He did speak out about aliens, but he only did it on his deathbed. He wrote out an affidavit and signed it before he died. And I think that's because he was obviously not afraid for his living relatives' safety, but he maybe have been afraid for his own safety. He thought, well, what are they going to do now? I'm going to die in a few hours. They're going to kill me. So he said, what the hell?
Now, one of our favourite UFO cases, Ben, is Rendlesham Forest, right? And we're still waiting for that documentary to come out. Any updates on when Capel Green's coming out now?
All I know is from speaking to the people involved that it's going to come out sometime this year. And I know there's a lot of cynicism about Capel Green because of the various delays.
Not from here, by the way, because I've spoken to Gary Heseltine a lot. I know how class this is going to be. I know things that are in this documentary that we can't even talk about.
Yeah, I've seen some previews.
Yeah, exactly, dude. So I'm just joking for the public to get it out there, and I want to see the finished thing,
Yeah, I want to see more. I want to see more come out. I mean, Gary, I'm hoping we'll get into. I think he may be doing a Contact in the Desert because I know they're doing a thing about. If anyone's listening, actually from Contact in the Desert, I know you're doing a panel on Rendlesham. So please get Gary Heseltine on as well because you've got the other guys on. So get Gary on because this film. I mean, people say, well, when's that going to happen? Well, people said that about Brexit, didn't they? They say,
Brexit, we got there, Ben. We got there, man. Yeah, the sky hasn't fallen. People said that maybe because Brexit had happened, that's why we hadn't done a show. It had scuppered our shows. I'm only joking, but yeah, we're still here, despite the media telling us that hell would freeze over and things. It'd be that bad.
Yeah, honestly, people say, well, Brexit's never coming. It's never coming. We're never going to see it. We're never going to see it. And a lot of people gave up on Brexit. Well, it did happen. It has happened. And now the same goes for Capel Green. People say it's never going to happen. It's never going to be finished. It is going to be finished. The reason it's taken so long, as you know from speaking to Gary, is that it's turned into a much bigger project than was originally thought because it was originally going to be quite a small scope of a project. It was basically going to focus on Larry Warren and his new information, and that was going to be it, and a little bit of extras. Since then, we've had Steve Longero and other people coming out of the closet and speaking out. There's a lot more.
Coming out the Rendlesham closet. I love it, man.
It's worse than Philip Schofield, I'll tell you.
That was a big story. Yeah, that was a big story that happened, wasn't it?
Oh.
Why it's a story in this day and age is beyond me. But, there's another reason I brought up Rendlesham, Ben. And there was a story I found the other day and people will not be surprised to learn that it came from the mysterious universe. I always go to this website. But it was the headline that caught my eye, and I saved it to kind of get your take on it tonight. It's from Nick Redfern. We both really like Nick. You know, I've had him on the show once. I'm choking to get you back on. Nick, you know, in the 1 in a billion chance you listen to the Kev Baker show, you're a busy guy. Please, please, please get back in touch. I'd love to get you back on. It says here a 1947 UFO incident with maybe a link to Rendlesham. So it says it was right around Christmas 1980 when one of the most significant of all UFO encounters occurred in Rendlesham Forest, Suffolk, England, near to the twin Royal Air Force bases Woodbridge and Bentwaters. Now, a memo prepared by Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt reveals the astonishing facts. Early in the morning of 27 December 80, approximately 0300 hours, 2 U.S. Air Force security police patrolmen saw unusual lights outside the back gate at RAF Woodbridge. Thinking an aircraft might have crashed or been forced down, they called for permission to go outside the gate to investigate. Now, the on-duty flight chief responded and allowed 3 patrolmen to proceed on foot. The individuals reported seeing a strange glowing object in the forest, and the object was described as being metallic in appearance and triangular in shape, approximately 2 to 3 meters across the base and approximately 2 meters high. It illuminated the entire forest with a bright light, and the object itself had a pulsing red light on top and a bank, and in brackets plural, of blue lights underneath. Now, the object was hovering or on legs. As the patrolman approached the object, it maneuvered through the trees and disappeared. Now, at the time, the animals on a nearby farm went into a frenzy, and the object was briefly sighted approximately an hour later near the back gate. The notable encounter remains unresolved to this day. Now, that's the one that is going to be obviously the topic within Capel Green. I've had Larry Warren on the show. Myself and Ben have talked about it. We've had Gary Heseltine on here. And Gary Heseltine, for me, that guy doesn't know about Rendlesham. You could probably write on the back of a stamp, honestly. Mm-hmm. So it goes on to say here, in light of all of the above, it's interesting to note that there is a UFO story from the very same area that dates way back to 1947. The account came from a man named Ronald Anstey, a long-time UFO researcher who died in November 2006. It transpires that Anstey had secured certain data that revolved around a flying saucer event in the summer months of 1947, and very near to Rendlesham Forest, no less. Now, the precise date was, and still is, unknown. What we do know, however, is that Anstey's informant was a family member. Reportedly, the affair involved the sudden and brief appearance out of nowhere of a classic saucer-shaped metallic vehicle over RAF Bentwaters. It was said to have been around 50 feet in diameter. Now, such was the concern over what happened, senior military personnel were flown in and secret meetings were quickly arranged to try and figure out what had happened. The matter was then never resolved to Anstey's satisfaction. He fired off letters to the UK's old Air Ministry, but failed to get meaningful answers. Anstey did, however, state that the presence of the UFO was somehow connected to a then new radar system in the area. How he knew that, though, I don't know. Now, have you ever heard of this one at all, Ben?
No, I've never heard of this person, and I didn't know about this event in 1947. However, I know there have been several strange incidents in the Rendlesham Forest area. The one in 1980, the Rendlesham Forest incident, is just one of several, and it seems to be the one that's received the most publicity because the most information has been released about it. However, there are many reports of strange things happening in the woods. Even since then, a guy called Derek Savory and Brenda Butler, they talk about their own encounters in those woods. And it doesn't surprise me that something like this happened in that particular area. And in the summer of 1947, the same time period as what happened in Roswell, It is very interesting, although what's described is somewhat different. It's like an arrival of a flying saucer at the base. There could be a connection. There could be a connection between the two. We also had the Kenneth Arnold sighting, of course, in that same time period, just before Roswell. The Mount Rainier, he spotted some craft at Mount Rainier, saucer skipping on a pond. There was a major global UFO flap in that particular time period. So it doesn't surprise me that something happened in Britain of that nature. And so I'm interested. Nick Redfern here has come up with something very, very interesting indeed.
Yeah, I do like Nick. He's a very interesting character, great researcher. He's prolific. He just churns out article after article and book after book. The guy's a powerhouse, man. He truly is. And I mean, as an author yourself, Ben, I mean, you must appreciate it. It takes a bit of time to put these books together, you know?
He really is prolific, actually. I mean, he's written books at a much faster rate than I do. It's possibly because he doesn't do what I do with Panmo radio and TV and things like that. So he focuses more of his time on the books themselves. Yeah, I mean, I really take my hat off to what he's done, because I've read, I think I've read about two or three of his books, the one about the Men in Black and things like that he's done, the Cosmic Secrecy book he did.
Yeah, he does the
very
black, I don't know if he's done a book on the black-eyed children, but I know he talks about them.
Yeah, so I mean, he covers all kinds of mysterious phenomena. He does it very well. His books are very interesting, and so this is an amazing scoop he's got here from an old case from a researcher who's sadly died. Yeah, but very often these things do come back, don't they, after a long time in the wilderness?
Absolutely. And just to go back, we'll take a look at the rest of the story here. It says, in my 1997 book, A Covert Agenda, I wrote about a radar-based research in that very area. On January 28th, 1935, the Tizard Committee, established under the dictatorship of Sir Henry Tizard, convened its first meeting, which ultimately led to the top-secret development of a workable radar system of the type employed in the Second World War. Now, most prominent of all, much of that highly classified research was conducted at Bodsey Manor on the Deben estuary. Now, it's just north of the town of Felixstowe and a mere stone's throw from what was for so many years the military bases of RAF Bentwaters and Royal Air Force Woodbridge. So the reason why I know all of this is simple. I found the correspondence between Anstey and the Air Ministry at the National Archives in Kew, England. This was in 1994, when I spent significant time going through certain newly declassified UFO papers. Now, I was able to see that Anstey had written a trio of letters to the Air Ministry, one of which concerned a 1954 UFO sighting of a RAF pilot named James Salandin. A deeper explanation of the National Archives papers revealed that the office Anstey dealt with was called Secretariat 6. That sounds like something out of the Soviet Union. And whose staff were clearly not keen on getting into correspondence, or worse, into debate with Anstey. Now, this is made all the more clear by the fact that the only correspondence from Secretariat 6 was to acknowledge that they had received Anstey's letters, and that was it. It's doubtful that today, more than 70 years later, we will ever get the answers to this intriguing but short on data case. It should be noted, though, that Anstey's letters to the Air Ministry were written on January the 30th, March the 7th, and March the 21st, 1963. 1963 was 17 years before the Rendlesham Forest affair occurred. How intriguing it is, then, that in the early 1960s, Anstey was digging into a story of a significant UFO encounter near RAF Bentwaters, which would go on later to be known, obviously, with Rendlesham. You know, that's a bit weird, that, Ben, right?
Very. I mean, the fact is, I find it interesting that this organisation called Secretariat 6 existed.
I've never heard of that been talked about.
It's probably one of these secret. It's probably one of these secret outfits. I mean, there are secret outfits that exist within, probably buried deep inside the civil service, which play roles that are not publicly acknowledged, part of the black budget. And when we talked before about the Pentax incident, about those strange people in yellow jackets who turned up in South Wales.
Yes,
Do you remember that?
yes,
What,
yes.
I think, have you interviewed Kaz Clark or Gary Jones?
You know, I haven't, but I would love you to put the word in, Ben. You know,
I'll be glad to. Kaz, Gary, I know they listen to you, so Kaz, Gary, get in touch with Kev. But just to give you an outline, after this really strange event that happened a few years ago in South Wales, I went to the location myself, and Gary and Kaz showed me around. Literally the following day, Kaz went to the field where this happened, where she walks her dog, and found a strange number of people. There were odd people that turned up. I think there were a couple of dozen of them. They were in tents, and they set up all kinds of equipment. They were wearing white boiler suits, like the police forensic teams, and they had on orange jackets. And she said to them, she asked them, "Well, what are you doing here?" And they said, "Oh, we're from Vodafone." And she thought it was a bit odd because she could see inside they had their jackets open, some of them, and she could quite clearly see that these guys were tooled up. They had shoulder holsters, and they had like pistols tucked into their inside their jackets. And she thought, well, it's odd. I'd never seen Vodafone engineers armed before. But anyway, she walked around, and there was these guys. They set up all kinds of pieces of strange equipment that she didn't notice, like computers and things like that. And there was some satellite dishes. And to me, Kev, it was obvious that this was a exact result, a direct result of the strange object that appeared there a couple of days earlier, which Kaz witnessed along with several other people. I've spoken to another witness who doesn't want to go public, and he backs up Kaz's story.
You know, Ben, if there's ever been one, let's just think about it this way, right? In the whole kind of, even if we just go throughout the 1900s, okay? If even one story of a downed craft, a piece of alien technology coming to Earth, if even just one of them is true, at that point, you'd have found the government and the military and that government immediately setting up some kind of retrieval team for anything that happens in the future. Now, with the allies and the back channels and everything else, you'd have to think, well, Britain do it, America do it. And by this point, I would imagine even if there hasn't been anything else other than Roswell or one of these other incidents we talk about, I would imagine these retrieval teams probably do exist, you know?
It's what's really weird about this whole thing, and Kaz and I talked about this, is that it's pretty clear these guys knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
They were an existing organisation. Maybe this was Secretariat 6 or something connected to it, something similar, which had been around for a long time, and this was just one more day at work. It's not like this UFO suddenly appeared and then someone in government says, "Oh my God, there's a UFO in Penta, just north of Cardiff. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Oh my God, does anyone know anyone who could deal with this? You just get together and work it out as you go along, all right?" It wasn't anything like that. These were guys who clearly knew what they were doing. Kaz describes what they were doing. He said they had the tent set up, all in neat rows. You know, the equipment was out there. These guys were walking around. They looked like experts who they'd clearly done this before, and they were doing it again, which means this is some kind of secret government organisation which is specifically designed for this particular kind of job. And what's more, it's sinister that they gave her a false story about who they were. They were from Vodafone. Later on, they told someone else they were a fracking research team, but they were armed. I mean, they had pistols tucked into their jackets. I mean, it's something very, very sinister going on here, Kev. You know what I mean? They had a big fierce guard dog. They had a massive fierce guard dog as well. It scared the hell out of Kaz's little Jack Russell.
That sounds like something that Mulder and Scully would stumble across, dude. And that's not to belittle the event. It's just, you know, that's a proper X-Files stuff right there. Especially in the UK and Wales, we don't typically have armed police, folks. You know, so you know this Secretariat 6, whatever it may be called now. You know, I don't know, but that I remember you coming on and talking about that. That's a really, really interesting one, and one that I think, you know, probably deserves more attention, Ben.
We're not used to seeing people walking around with guns here in
No.
Britain. It's just not done. And
You can't walk down.
yeah.
If you buy like kitchen knives, if they're over a certain length, you better get them sent to you, because if you get caught taking them home on the bus.
When I went into a pub in the Penta to have a drink, the barmaid says she saw them as well, and she doesn't. You know, she saw them too. So they were definitely there.
Yeah, weird one. And we're almost on the break, Ben. This has been really, really good tonight, folks, I must admit. These are all the kind of subjects I love to get into. And there's nothing new about alien visitation, in my opinion, because you think of the shows we've done with Max in recent times about the Vermanas and all the kind of ties to the ancient world and our brothers and sisters and who knows what else coming from the stars. We'll be back with one more segment to go. Don't go anywhere. There we go. There we go.
Nice.
Got the timing right. Yes, indeedy. I think we're loud. We're clear. I seen a little hiccup. There was a glitch on StreamLabs, but I caught it. We're good, man. One segment to go, Ben, and when we come back after the break, I've still got the story about the astronaut and her coming.
Yeah, Helen Sharman. That's
yeah,
interesting.
our one coming out the closet, coming out the disclosure closet, man. Whoa.
Well, it's interesting that she's come out with this. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. By the way, if Kaz or Gary are listening and they do listen to your show, you know, get in touch with Kev.
Please do,
because it'll be a very interesting story to cover. I think, Kev, because this is.
Now, Ben, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some music on.
Okay.
Because I'm going to go make a quick coffee, right? And
Yeah, sure.
you can go and do your thing. You get a quick break. I'm going to put the thumbnail up. Folks, we'll be back in a minute or so. I just need to go and grab a quick drink. Getting mouth dry syndrome. That's can't even speak now. We're going to be back in a short minute, folks. Don't go anywhere. Where's those pesky tunes? Will we have something different today? I think we will. There we go. Let me bring us back. There we are, Benny boy. One more segment to go, folks. We're just about to go back to the mothership. We'll go back to tfrlive.com. I'll be back on the live stream tomorrow. I'll be doing an update on... it's only the sniffles, mate. It's only the sniffles. Yes, I'll have an update on that tomorrow. And tomorrow night, not sure what's happening on the show. I think Max is maybe coming on. Black Templar one night this week. I think Ryan might be coming on. I need to find out what's happening. We're going back to the network now, folks. Here we go. There we go. We're live. Again, final segment on today's Kev Baker show with Ben, Emlyn, Emlyn-Jones. Check out all of his work. I'll get the big man to give you his websites and his social media links in just a moment. And don't forget, I'll be back tomorrow live here on the show. I think it's going to be Max from Germany. So if it's going to be Max from Germany, what a perfect show to follow on from tonight's one, because we're going to be getting into more of this ancient technology, more of the kind of the flying crafts and the Vermanas and that type thing. You know, all that ancient woo, Ben. I love getting into all that stuff, and I think that'd be a perfect follow-on from this. But if it's not Max and I've got my dates all mixed up, and yeah, it can happen in my head, folks, I'll be opening the phones up, because I love opening the phones. And yeah, I'm going to even start doing shows where it's just fully open lines. I'll have a couple of stories in the background, but you's always responding your numbers when I open the lines up. So I think we need to get into doing more of that. I love hearing your stories, and in particular, your woo. Because, Ben, you'll know yourself, right? It's great that we've got people like Nick Redfern and all the other writers, you included as well, keeping up on all the stories that are coming out, all the kind of woo. You go around all the conferences and things, right? So you get to meet a lot of people. And there's a lot of stories that we've never heard about. They're just somebody's story, you know? They've never gone public onto the internet with it. And it's the same when I open the phones up, you know? Some of the things that people have to tell you, it just really, you know, more confirmation that there's so much more going on in this world, from aliens all the way to creepy crawlies and critters and you know who knows what, right? But I love hearing that real element, that real story that nobody's heard before.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I hear the most amazing things, and some of the things that people don't want me to repeat.
Exactly.
Even within
Yeah.
our
I can
community.
imagine, dude. I can imagine, man. You must be like the keeper of super secret woo.
Yeah, there's a few things, yeah, that I do hold in confidence, and I mean, I do these things because I believe it's a serious case. These things are really happening. Not every single UFO case, of course, not every single alien contact case, but enough of them are real to be real, to make it no doubt that there's some reality behind it. You yourself said it only takes one of these things to be real. Only one of these things has to be real. It's not like all of them have to. And therefore, we are being visited. We're not alone. If just one of these cases is real, it proves that we are not alone in this universe, and we are being visited. And I think far more than one is real. Far more.
Yeah, you know, when you just mentioned alien contactees there, that's something I haven't experienced myself, but I truly believe it happens. And that doesn't mean that everyone I've seen talking about it happening to them. Now, again, I'm not them, but some, when you hear them talking, you know, you can tell when somebody's spinning you a story versus somebody that's really, you know, recalling a memory and actually reliving it at times. You know, it's painful to watch, you know, because they are going through it again. Now, what that says about an alien agenda or what's going on, you know, that there, Ben, I mean, dang, dude. That's serious stuff. I mean, you're talking about people maybe, and I've no reason to discount some of them, that are literally producing hybrid children and things.
It's almost unbelievable for somebody who's with a conditioned mind, who has not looked into these things and has been following the entire mainstream worldview. It's incomprehensible.
It's easy to react and reject it right off the back from that. Yeah.
And sadly, a lot of people do, and these are the people who will have trouble dealing with alien encounters. On the other hand, you know, I speak to a lot of people, and I do think I can sometimes tell when someone's spinning me a yarn. As you said about Randy Kramer, you know, he has an authenticity to him that you've detected. And I say the same when I listen to the testimony of people like Larry Warren. It's that when they say the same things over and over, they don't change their story. Bob Lazar, again, he's another person I take very seriously because of the way he describes things. Commander David Fravor and others. You could just sense that they are recalling something real. It's the look in their eyes.
Fravor, absolutely, yeah. Fravor, absolutely. Bang on, yeah.
And you see that famous interview with what's her name, Ellie Roostenberg, and her own encounters. You know, that a lot of people cite that one as very authentic because she's a quite ordinary woman describing this incredible thing that happened to her and her family in her house. Jessie Roostenberg, and it's amazing with the people sometimes come out with these things, and there's no real reason for them to do so. They don't gain anything from it other than they're saying something that they believe is true and they're telling people, and they've got no reason really to say so other than people are asking them about it, or it's something that happened they want to share. I mean, you mentioned the astronauts before the break, and well, this is not a UFO witness, but Helen Sharman has said something, and I found very remarkable because she's quite famous because she was the first British person in space. I kind of found it was a bit amazing when I thought that no British person ever went into space until 1991. Of course, it's all been Americans and Russians, but I mean, they did take people from other countries up with them onto the space shuttle and on some of the Soyuz rockets and things like that. But it was only in 1991 when it was the UK's turn. Helen Sharma went up for 8 days to the Mir space station, and the Mir has crashed now. It's crashed back to Earth. It's not needed anymore because it was it was a bit like the International Space Station, except it was smaller and it was older and it was getting on a bit. So they basically deorbited it, and they just have the ISS now. But she went up at age 27, one of the youngest people ever in space, and she spent 8 days up there. And she said she did an interview, which was really quite amazing. And she says this: aliens exist. There's no two ways about it. There are so many billions of stars out there in the universe that there must be all sorts of different life forms. Will they be like you and me, made up of carbon and nitrogen? Maybe not. It's possible they're here right now and we can't see them. It's the last sentence that I find most revealing. It's possible they're here right now and we simply can't see them. Well, that's more. I mean, a lot of people say, well, she's just making a comment about SETI. Well, the whole point of SETI, as we were saying at the beginning of the program, is that, well, there are aliens out there, but they're nowhere near us. The best we can do is call them using radio waves. But she's actually said that there are aliens near us and maybe we can't see them. And I do wonder what experiences she might have had while she was up in space on that space station, or indeed talking to other astronauts or who may have had experiences as well. I mean, she may have picked something up that she doesn't really want to talk too explicitly about, but she does want to say something. And considering she occupies this unique place in history, she's probably one of the most prominent people in the spacefaring sphere.
I'd imagine she's met the Queen, right? She's got to have met the Queen.
She's an OBE. Yeah,
right, there you go. That's what she's talking about. It's code, man. It's code.
Oh, you mean? Oh, right. Did she see the old green tail swishing under the dress?
I think she caught a glimpse of something, did a scaly hand coming out or something, man. Telling you. But no, I tell you, Ben, when you sent me this, I'd missed that story coming out. That really is quite significant, and like you say, it's a step further to say perhaps they're here, and we don't see them. They're all around us. Maybe she sees alien people.
You never know. You never know, Kev. Maybe that is what she's hinting at. I mean, she may have heard people talking about, well, maybe they're already here on Earth, because of course I do believe they are on the Earth. The aliens are already here, and of course they do disguise themselves. They don't go about openly. By our standards, of course, they are very, very secret. And this is why when Tim Peake went up into space, I wrote an open letter to him asking him to what he saw, whether he saw something that he shouldn't have and whether he'll say anything about it. Because there are astronauts who've spoken out. People like Gennady Strikalov has spoken out, and William Cooper. What's his name? Gordon Cooper, not Billy Cooper, Behold a Pale Horse, not that Cooper, no.
Gordon Cooper, yeah.
Yeah, Colonel Gordon Cooper, who actually flew in the 60s up on the Gemini missions and set an endurance record in space. He's spoken about what he saw. Gennady Strikalov was actually on the Salyut space station.
Think about Edgar Mitchell, the late Edgar Mitchell, you know, he really did. I mean, it almost... later on in life, I mean, he was almost like one of us, right? I mean, the stuff that he was getting into and talking about, and wow, man.
Definitely. Gennady Strakalov was on the Salyut, was it the Salyut 7 space station, which is like an older version of Mir that was sent up in the 70s. And he talks about things like there was clouds of something surrounding the craft and beings and things like that appear. Well, I think it was Strakalov who said that. And I mean, so when I did say to Tim Peake, I says, look, if I just wrote to him and said, if you have an encounter, please speak out about it. And now Helen Sharman has spoken out. And so she said something. Maybe Tim Peake will as well. Maybe more astronauts will. I mean, maybe Samantha Cristoforetti will do that, because we talked about her, didn't we? I think on a previous show.
I want my man Musk to get up there, dude. Once he gets up there, he's the kind of lunatic that'll tweet it from space.
I hope so, yeah, definitely. You never know. But,
some say he already is one. I don't go along that line of thinking, but, you know.
He looks a bit alien, if you ask me.
Oh, he thinks like one, dude. I like his alien thinking. It's outside the box. In fact, he has no box. He doesn't even see the box anymore. His thinking's so outside the box.
I remember we discussed like the weird things that he'd been up to, yeah. And
well, hold on to your heads, folks, and I literally mean hold on to your heads, because later this year there's going to be a major new announcement when it comes to the Neuralink. The new upgrade I was reading today. Even Elon Musk says, if you thought the last thing that we presented, and remember the video we got where we've seen all the technology and it puts it in and it's a thread, and well, he says the upgraded version, oh, so much better. Wait till you see this, and that's going to be coming later this year. So, oh, who knows what we're going to see this time, dude.
Well, you never know, yeah. But, you know, what's happening in space is interesting. I mean, Samantha Cristoforetti was actually recorded exclaiming in shock while she was on an extravehicular activity with another guy from Russia, another crew member from the ISS. And what's interesting about this video is you see something in the background, and you hear she goes, oh my god, what's that?" or something like that. And he goes, quiet. It's almost like he tells her to be quiet, because they are on the open channel, and everyone in the world, you know, thousands of people around the world are probably watching online as this live EVA is taking place. And I got the feeling from that the Russian guy knows a lot more than she does, and he's basically, he knows what the thing that went past them is something he's familiar with, but he hasn't sort of had the time to take Samantha to one side and say, look, there's something you need to know here.
You haven't been read in yet. Let me tell you how this works. And we've got Paranormal Portal in the chat room. Brent Thomas, and I think I need to make the introduction between Brent and Ben, because I can't think of a better guest on Brent's show than Ben. And the more people get to hear Ben, the better, in my opinion. And Brent, thanks, you're going to love this, because I think you were telling me, Ben, that you're going to be speaking to somebody that covers Bigfoot very soon.
I am indeed. In fact, on Thursday evening at 8 p.m. British time, please tune into Hapanwo Radio, and you can find out the links to that on my general website collection. I'm going to be speaking to Andy McGrath, who is a cryptozoologist, and we're going to be talking about the Loch Ness Monster. We're going to be talking about Bigfoot. We're going to be talking about all kinds of other strange things that he's been investigating in his 27 years of tracking down unknown creatures in the wilds of Britain and North America and many, many other places. So do please try that out. Do please check that out and see what you think.
I can't wait for you to get into it with Andy, because we've had our first sighting of Nessie in 2020. That's on the Mysterious Universe. Let's see if we've got time. I think we've got time to get into this quickly.
Yeah.
But it says here, first sighting of the Loch Ness Monster. It says, well, 2019 was a record-breaking year for Loch Ness Monster sightings, with a mind-boggling 18. And that's in the same when the results of a long-awaited DNA study were released and showed no unidentifiable creatures in the loch, leading the scientists to speculate that Nessie is probably a giant eel. Wah, wah, wah. As I explained, I used to catch eels at the mouth of Loch Ness when I was a child fishing. It's no surprise they got eel DNA in there. And just because they never got Nessie's DNA in a 26-mile long, mile-wide loch with caverns that go who knows where, just because you didn't find it in that small sample you took, I don't think we can rule Nessie out altogether. But anyway, it says here, well, someone has spotted the first giant eel or Loch Ness monster of 2020, and it's a name Nessie fans will recognise. Is that a sign we're in for another record year, or do the rules need to be changed? So it says January the 18th, 2020, long-time webcam watcher, Ian or Ewan, I don't know how you, O'Fanagan? O'Fagan? I don't know, strange one there, definitely a very Irish name anyway. Once again caught something on video from the webcam at 15:58 hours. The video shows something rising from the water, and a few seconds later, disappearing again. Now, people can check that out, but to quote the guy, it says the object was at least 4 feet wide and maybe 10 feet long. It was a shame the cam quality was not great at the time of the sighting. There's been a lot of speculation that this creature is migratory in nature. Well, I think a sighting on the 18th of January disproves this theory, and Nessie, in my opinion, goes no further than Loch Ness itself. Or it's some kind of mythological creature known as the Kelpie, a shape-shifting water spirit. That's my opinion. So I don't know, but the Loch Ness monster, dude, it's always going to be a fascinating topic.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting because indeed, Andy and I do talk about this. We talk about the DNA study that was done in Loch Ness and the fact that it's not as conclusive as some of the people claim it is. It doesn't. They didn't find any DNA from any unknown species of reptile or anything, but that doesn't prove it's not there. The eel hypothesis. Now, this is interesting because this, I think, goes back to it was Jonathan Downes or Richard Freeman. I'm not sure. Someone from the Centre for Fortean Zoology. But it appears in one of their books, and they say that it's a eunuch eel, a large eel with atrophied genitals, which means it doesn't reproduce, which means it just hangs around in the rivers and doesn't head off to sea to mate. And it grows to enormous size and is very, very long-lived. Now, there are these eels. I mean, some of them have been. There's a film in the River Ness, actually, of one of these. But the idea this is some kind of the Nessie actually is an eel doesn't make sense. No. I mean, Nessie may be some kind of fish or a shark. It's possible, but it's not an eel. Eels don't behave the way. A lot of the sightings reports, some of the photographs, they show a creature that is clearly able to lift a large proportion of its body clear of the water. They often describe it as being snake-like or having a long neck, rather like the plesiosaur dinosaur. It lifts itself clear of the water. Now, eels don't do that. Eels that don't come to they don't actually break the surface in that way. Then there's too many witness reports that you see Nessie behaving in this particular manner, which I think discounts the eel theory. And indeed, Andy has found reports of sightings near the south end of the loch. There's a bridge, an old bridge, and there's the ruins of a bridge, and they've been seen from there. So I mean, it's possible they do come in and out of the loch. I mean, that is a possibility. Then there's underground. There may well be underground connections as well, and there's the River Ness and things like that. But
I must admit,
it's certainly not an eel.
From a local's point of view, no, the eel to me is kind of ridiculous. Not ridiculous that there's eel DNA in there. I'd expect to find a lot of it, like you say, Ben. The River Ness, down where you're talking about, that's the river, the Oich. I know people in America and down in England will think the river what? O-I-C-H, the Oich, right? So, yeah, you get eels all over that place, unsurprising. But I know the locals. Some of the ones I would speak to, anyway, the ones I would know. These caves under the loch, I think, because nobody's ever really explored them. And then you find out about the kind of cave system that stretches from Scotland all the way across Europe down to Turkey. And I tell you, dude, there's more going on, not just beneath the surface of the water, but down towards the crust of the earth as well,
Yeah. Who knows where it comes from? And it may be like a kelpie. There may be some of the sightings can be explained that way. It may be something to do with Aleister Crowley. I mean, who knows it could be there's more than one phenomena at work here, which we've generically characterized as Nessie, but it may be more than one thing. But I think there is some kind of creature there. I mean, and from what Andy's described and other people, there is some kind of being, some kind of creature there, and its behavior doesn't match that of an eel. It all depends how this goes. I mean, it's obviously something that avoids human contact. It's not curious. It doesn't approach us. It's going to be a hard one to solve, considering the loch is so huge. It's like 20 miles long, as you said, a couple of miles wide. Was it 900 feet deep in some areas? You could drown all the people in the world 3 times over in that loch. It's 80% of all the fresh water in the UK can be found in that one body of water. So, I
wonder if that body of water in any way leads to the paranormal woo of the whole Great Glen. You know, I've been really thinking about it lately. You know, I talk about Crowley a lot, I get that, but, you know, we're talking about Clava Cairns, the Pictus Stone, they say burial site, but blatantly it's some kind of calendar system, some marking of cycles. You know, you've got Culloden, the battles that were fought, Bonnie Prince Charlie, he basically hid out in the village that I was brought up in, Fort Augustus, when he was, you know, on the run. So many like stories of things from people all over the ages up in that area, dude. I don't know. You talk about ley lines, things like that. I've heard there's ley lines there. But that whole place, it's like, it's supercharged, man. And when you really sit back and you think about it, and I know my mum will be listening right now, you know, when you start to add up everything, and there's stories that, you know, I've probably forgotten there's that many of them, Ben. But I don't know, it's just one of these locations that seems to always give when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the Great Glen, if you look at it on the map, you can see it's literally a fault. It's a geological fault that basically cuts Scotland in half. It's a really remarkable structure, a geological structure, which includes Loch Ness. Scotland itself, as we've discussed previously, is by far the most paranormal country on Earth. The UFO sightings, considering the size of the nation and its population, it's definitely the most voluminous, to use that word again.
Oh, nice, Ben, nice. Yeah,
I mean,
nice,
you have weird things like you have like the various abduction cases. You have the what was the name of the guy who was attacked by these circular objects and he had his trousers ripped. There's these things that happen in Scotland, and of course Scotland has paranormal activities often associated with things such as violence and suffering and death, which is why you get so many hauntings in hospitals, for example, because there's all so much going on there. Scotland has a very violent history. I mean, more so than most countries. You can hardly walk a mile without coming across the site of a battle or a massacre. The activity of so much suffering and so much hatred and so much killing and things like that, that itself could have created the circumstances by which phenomena could emerge. And that's several paranormal researchers have written about that and have described that. So yeah, if you want to know almost anything, whether it's cryptozoology, ufology, or ghosts, or anything else, the place to go is Scotland. Wherever you are in the world, head for Scotland. Kev will give you a grand tour, I'm sure.
And of course, you know, I'm here too. Yes, indeed. But no, Ben, this has been it's been a blast. It's been a rare treat tonight. Bang, we've gone over some really good stories. I was going to ask you as well about your guest coming up, whether he talks about Bigfoot in the UK. But if people want to know about that, tell them again when they can hear your show, where they can listen to it, and give them anything you need to give them, dude.
Sure, 8 p.m. Thursday evening, Hapanwo Radio. It's very simple to find. HPANWO, Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, and just put radio in and you'll find it. And all the links are there, which will show you how you can listen to the show live. If you missed the live show, don't worry. It'll be a podcast. It'll be recorded just like Kev's show is, and it'll be available on Spreaker as a downloadable podcast. So I hope you enjoy it.
Yes, indeed, my good friend. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, ladies and gentlemen. I know I have. Ben is, like I say, one of the leading researchers and speakers, in my opinion, in the UK. And of course, he spread his wings last year. He went abroad speaking as well. But don't forget, he's an author in his own right as well. He's got 3 books out there, all to do with disclosure. Now, I urge you all to check that out. And I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. It might be the Max, the Black Templar, to continue our dive down the ancient rabbit hole. Oh, that man is knocking it clean out the park, some of the stuff he's bringing to the table. Or if it's not, I know you're going to love this. I'm going to start having the whole open lines, full show thing going on. We're going to go for it. You've really, really impressed me, all you listeners and viewers out there. You really have. Every time we open the phones, you raise the bar. You steal the show. And that's what it's all about. Real people, real radio, and I want real woo. And the only way I can do that is coming to you. You know, there you go. I'm a poet and I didn't know it. But for another night, we're almost out of here. Joe Joseph and the Freedom Link will be coming up right after the break. And if that wasn't enough for you, I'll probably be doing a quick live stream tomorrow daytime. Keep an eye on my YouTube channel. Try to think what else I have to tell you before we get out of here. I'm probably missed the music to get out of here. How long we got? No, folks. Thank you all for tuning in yet again. Wherever you are, make it TFR and Denny, touch that dial. Keep your mind open. Keep looking for the woo, but not to the point where your brain turns to black goo. In fact, I hadn't said goodbye to our YouTube audience. How rude of me. I just went to finish the stream. Ben, thank you so much, brother. You hang
You're
on
welcome,
the line
man.
when
Thank
we
you.
get off of here. We'll get our next date set up. But
Very
folks,
well done.
I apologise for that. That's my bad. So great. We almost had 300 in here steady on the stream tonight. We're growing. We're hitting that curve. A lot of new subscribers coming onto the channel as well. I'm so happy. New members. We'll have new content tomorrow. Every day, new content coming at you. If you want to support the stream, please consider becoming a member. You get your Sunday VIP KBS experience. You get your own unique emojis. And I think we're only 9 away from a Gnomey emoji. Yes, we've got gnomes ready to go in the background, but I need you to show some faith in me, and we'll take it that further, that extra yard. And with people like Ben and all the other regular guests, all of the new guests, and all of you when I open up the phones, I tell you, I am enjoying myself more than I have done in a long time. And yes, I'll be doing an update on that big story tomorrow, but it's good to kind of turn our attention away to something else. And when it comes to space woo and first contact, Ben Emlyn-Jones is the man that I go to. So thank you all for listening tonight. Good night. God bless. Keep it real. And for one last time, keep your mind open. Keep looking for the woo, but not to the point where your brain turns to black goo.